Hey guys, welcome back to more r/entitled people stories. In this video, my entitled neighbor family destroyed my fence to get rid of property boundaries and then constantly trespass and use my pool. Here is what happened. The title story starts like this. I am 38 and recently moved into a new house with my wife Amanda and two daughters Ellie and Hannah. Growing up, my family did not have enough money to live in anything more than a small apartment where we were cramped together and rarely got privacy. I have two older siblings, so space was a luxury we did not have. I ended up spending most of my time at the local YMCA or libraries in the area just to be able to get away for a while. Even if I was not doing the most entertaining thing in the world. Through that, I found that I have a love for swimming and I started doing everything I could to have time in the water. I joined the water polo team when I got to high school and actually met my wife at a swimming camp I saved up money to go to. She did not pursue swimming the same way I did, but she still enjoys being in the water, especially if it is with me. I have done my best to get my girls interested in swimming and they like playing in the water, but are not quite interested in competing, which I'm okay with. My wife and I have worked hard over the years so that we could pool together our money and buy a house. I had never lived in a house before because my parents were only able to afford one a few years after I went to college and then moved out. Since then, I've been living in various apartments with Amanda and the girls and dreamed about owning a house. We finally had enough to start seriously looking for one, and we probably went to 50 or so open houses in hopes that we would find one that called out to us. A lot of houses needed a lot of work done, and we were not quite ready to commit to that level of renovation, especially when we would already be paying a decent amount for the property itself. Some other places were in questionable neighborhoods that clearly had a lot of rambunctious people living in them, which was not exactly what we were looking for. We did find a few places that we liked, but they were out of our price range, so we had to pass them by for now. We went to one neighborhood that was fairly close to an elementary school and had a park nearby. It seemed like a nice place to live, so we were excited to check out the house that was currently for sale. It was a beautiful place that had clearly been renovated in the last few years, as it had a modern feel to it that many of the other houses did not have. There were enough bedrooms for each of us and a big kitchen that had a view of the living room, so we would be able to watch the girls play while making dinner. Ellie and Hannah were not exactly happy about the move, but even they thought this house would be fun to live in. One of the biggest positives for me was the pool in the backyard, as it was something I had always dreamed of having for almost my entire life. It all seemed too good to be true. The house was amazing and the neighborhood was perfect for raising kids, all the while being at an affordable price point. In hindsight, we should have been more suspicious about the whole thing, but had been optimistic that we had stumbled upon the deal of our lives. We put an offer in immediately and it didn't take long to hear back. There was a little negotiating and we made sure to have the house inspected before deciding anything, but soon enough we were the owners of a new house. Moving was a slow process, mostly because unpacking was a chore. We were not used to having so much space, so we didn't know where to put everything that we had while maintaining a cohesive look throughout the property. We did not quite have enough furniture to fill every room, but that did not stop the space from feeling new and exciting. The girls argued a bit over who would get which room, but they eventually came to an agreement that Ellie should get the first pick since she is older by a few years. Things were going well and we were excited about the future. We had a few people come by to welcome us to the neighborhood with homemade cookies or a nice houseplant to brighten the space, and it was so wonderful to have people around who wanted to get to know us. We heard about the best places to eat and different after-school activities for the girls to participate in, so we were feeling pretty good about this new area. The only people we really did not hear from were Rick and Karen that lived in the house directly to our left. There had been a few occasions when I waved to them, but I never got any type of response back, not even anything that would signify that they saw me. I did not feel like they were obligated to come over and greet us, but it was the first thing that implied something was wrong with them. The next thing that happened occurred one morning at about 10 AM when I was doing some yard work. The lawn had been neglected a bit while the house was up for sale, so it needed some care to get it back to looking beautiful, and I was mowing the lawn before heading off to work. I had specifically picked late morning so that I would not wake anyone up, but it wouldn't be so warm outside that mowing would be torturous to me. My lawnmower is not that loud compared to others, so I was sure it would be okay, but after working for a couple of minutes, Rick came outside and flagged me down. Me, hey, what can I do for you? Rick, do you mind? Me, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean. Your mower is obnoxious. Me, I'm sorry, did I wake you up? No, I've been awake since 6. I was trying to watch TV. Me, well, it'll just be a few more minutes and then it'll be quiet. Rick, can't you just do it some other time? It's not very respectful for you to be making so much noise and bothering everyone else in the area. Me, I understand, but I really need to get this done. He scoffed and walked back to his house, grumbling something under his breath the whole time until he disappeared behind the front door. I was at a bit of a loss for words because I hadn't been mowing for long enough to really get on anyone's nerves, and he had been fairly aggressive towards me. I initially chalked it up to him having a bad day and taking it out on me, so I tried to forget about it. There was a simple fence that separated our house from Rick and Karen's. It was not the nicest fence, but it seemed good enough, especially after first moving in. I spent a lot of my weekends swimming around in the pool, and I swear, I sometimes heard whispering coming from the other side of the fence or the occasional head peeking up from behind the fence. It was definitely unnerving, and I had brought it up with them once, but they just looked at me like I was crazy, so I dropped it. I did not actually believe that I was seeing things, but I was not interested in having any sort of confrontation with them, which led to me just ignoring it. The whole thing did make me hesitant to let Ellie and Hannah play in the backyard since I didn't like the idea of someone spying on them for any reason, but I kept a lookout when they played and that made me feel comfortable. I was at work one day when I got a call from Amanda, which is unusual. I was worried it was something about one of the girls, so I answered right away and she explained that her car had been blocked in the driveway by a number of other cars. She had to pick up the kids from school though and run some errands, but she couldn't get out of the driveway. She told me that she had waited nearly 2 hours, but the cars were still there and she was not sure what the best course of action was. Amanda is the type of person who doesn't want to make anyone upset or angry and feels terrible if she gets on someone's bad side, so she wanted me to help her make the best decision for the moment. I told her to call the tow company and have all the cars towed as they did not have permission to park on our property and we did not even know who the cars belonged to. She agreed and left to get all of her chores for the day done, and she felt pretty good about her decision later. I got home an hour or two later and I was helping with dinner when someone knocked on our door. I went to answer it and saw both Karen and Rick standing on our porch with an expression that told me that they were pissed off. Me, what seems to be the problem, sir? Karen, our cars were parked in your driveway earlier this afternoon and now they are gone. What did you do with them? Me, they were blocking my wife's car and she needed to get over to the school to pick up our kids, so she had them towed. Rick, couldn't your kids have just walked home? Me, maybe, but we prefer to pick them up just in case. Karen, well, why didn't you just ask us to move them? Me, she didn't know that they were your cars. You never mentioned that you were gonna park there, so how was she supposed to know? Karen, well, at least tell us where we go to get our cars. Me, I'm not sure, but I think the tow company will tell you if you give them a call. That ended the conversation, and I later learned that they called and found out the impound lot had closed for the night and they had to wait until the next morning to go get their vehicles. I think it cost a few $100s per car, so it was not a measly sum of cash. The following weekend, I was hanging around the house getting some chores done while Amanda and the kids were at the library for the afternoon. I was about to head out to the grocery store when I looked outside and saw 2 cars parked in the driveway once again and blocking my car in. I sighed and went over to the neighbor's house to ask them to move their cars. They should have been home since their cars were here, but no one came to the door no matter how much I knocked. I tried to call through the door and tell them that I would have to call the tow company again if they didn't move, but I did not get a response, so I went back to my own house and called the tow company. They thought it was pretty funny that they were getting the same call within a week of each other, because who in their right mind would make the same mistake and get their cars towed twice? Then I finally heard from Rick and Karen later that night when they started banging on my door so aggressively that the rest of my family was frightened. I opened the door and they began shouting about how I had their cars towed again for no good reason, despite us having arrived at an agreement. I told them that we never agreed on anything and they did not have permission to park on our property. It went back and forth for a while, but I was not backing down because I did not want their cars in my driveway at any point and I would have them towed as many times as I needed to. They eventually left, although I could tell that they were not very happy about everything. There were a couple of weeks where we didn't have any issues with them and we were hoping that they had decided to leave us alone, which was a relief. I was working from home one day so that I could take care of the girls while Amanda was on vacation, and I was in the office upstairs taking some calls when Ellie texted me. She wanted to see if I could come downstairs for a minute, but I was right in the middle of something and could not get out of it for a little while. I could hear sounds from the backyard, but I assumed it was either the girls playing or sounds coming from another yard. I got back to work and, after an hour or so, got up to see what the girls needed. They were sitting in the living room with confused looks on their faces, and I asked what the problem was. They explained that people were in our backyard and playing in our pool, and they did not know what to do, so they had waited for me to deal with it, which I told them was the right thing to do. I eventually went out there and asked what they were doing in my yard, to which they responded that the previous owners let them play in the pool on occasion. This struck me as a lie, but I didn't have any evidence to prove them wrong, so I reiterated that I did not want them on my property and I would appreciate if they left so I could go back to work. They were not budging though, and their kids were running all over the place. I looked around the yard for evidence of how they got in. We have a locked gate that is tall enough to be difficult to scale, and saw that pieces of wood from the fence were scattered along the ground. It looked like someone had taken an axe to it, and I wondered how they managed to do that without alerting me to what they were doing. I took a closer look and saw that some of the tiles around the pool had been damaged somehow and were cracked or broken, and I could not even imagine how had that happened, but I knew it was not me or anyone else in my family who had done that. I tried once again to get them to leave, but they were relentless, so I called the police and told them my neighbors were trespassing on my property. Rick and Karen made a big fuss when the authorities arrived, but I reminded them that I had asked them to leave multiple times, but they refused. I mentioned to the officers that part of the pool had been destroyed and I smashed up the fence separating our properties in order to get into my yard. The cops eventually found out that one of the posts of the fence could be moved, which is how they got into our yard. They were fined $100 for trespassing and had to pay for a new fence, which ended up costing a couple of $100s when you add the cost of the installation on top of the materials. However, the pool needed to be completely retiled, which they also paid for, and that ended up being around $15,000. We then found out that they were renting the property, and when their landlord found out what they had done, he swiftly evicted them without listening to their begging and promises to stop causing problems. Needless to say, we have not heard from them and a new family moved in, and they've been polite and gracious to us. But seriously, I cannot say that I'm gonna miss Rick and Karen. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you ever had to deal with entitled neighbors like Rick and Karen, then please don't forget to share your own story either in the comments on YouTube or on r/Ripe Stories on Reddit, where you can post your own story and there is a good chance that I will read it in a video. In addition, if you enjoyed the story so far, please don't forget to like the video and leave a comment, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much, and the next one is titled Neighbors Get What They Deserve. I, male 23, live in my grandparents' garage. It has full electrical and plumbing. I even have fiber optic internet. They had it converted legally to a suite when my oldest cousin went to university in their city. Either way, I'm the youngest cousin, and until one of my older relatives' kids are ready to go to university, I have a cheap place to live. My grandparents though no longer drive, but I do. I don't own a car, I use a car share service. The problem is that I always run my grandparents around. I take them to appointments and grocery shopping and to family functions, but I don't mind it at all. I'm saving so much by living with them, I'll be able to have a great down payment for a house when I move out. However, the neighborhood has no private street parking. It is an old neighborhood built before every family had multiple cars, and you cannot double park. You'd definitely be a jerk for blocking traffic in one direction, so when we are going to need a car, I always know in advance and arrange my schedule so I can pick one up. Then I park in front of the house so my grandparents can get in safely, and off we go. However, a few of the neighbors have started parking in front of the house since we do not. This is not usually a problem because, as I stated, we don't own a car, but sometimes this means that I have to park a block away and then come get them. Like I said though, we always schedule our trips. We go grocery shopping the same time every week. Their doctor's appointments are scheduled weeks in advance, so we tell the neighbors and they make sure I can park in front of the house. Until the new neighbors, they have 5 cars. What they do is they park 1 in their garage and 4 on the street, including 2 in front of my grandparents' house. I've tried asking them to please be sure to leave a parking spot on the days I need it, and they said that there is no private parking spots on the street. So they refused to leave the spot. I got a handicap parking pass from the city since I'm the driver for my grandparents, and I got the city to put a handicap parking spot in front of the house. Anyone with a handicap parking pass can park there, but no one else has one. But the city still treats it like any other zone and has been ticketing cars that park there. Now the neighbors are mad at me because they've been ticketed multiple times and now they've been towed at least once. Neither myself or my grandparents have ever reported them. They are calling me an a-hole for taking up a spot that I don't even need 99% of the time. I feel guilty, but my grandpa said I did the right thing. My grandmother wants me to make nice though. So, Ripe Stars, what do you think about this story? Do you think that OP is the a-hole or not? Some people on Reddit said, not the a-hole, if it is now a handicapped spot, their only legal parking is getting them towed. Comment number 2, not the a-hole. Normally I roll my eyes a little when people complain about others parking in front of their houses, but your grandparents obviously have enough of a need that you are qualified for the disabled parking tag and the spot. Your neighbor knows what disabled parking is and chose to ignore that. That's on them. And yeah, Ripe Stars, obviously people that fraudulently park in handicap parking even though they have no business being there deserve no empathy or respect in my opinion. Let me know what you think about this story in the comments. And the next one is titled, Don't Trespass, Dude. So we have a cabin in upstate PA, very secluded, the land is posted keep out private property. The only way in is over a bridge that we built at great expense, and people are constantly trespassing. They think nothing of driving up right to the house and sitting on the porch using the outside water and taking firewood. I got a neighbor who keeps an eye on the place. He called one day and said there were people with 3 tents set up. He asked if I knew them. No, I don't. Please ask them to leave. So he drove over to their campsite and gave them the work to move along. They cussed him out and told him they were set up and not going anywhere. He called me back and gave me the scoop. I said, okay, so how about you dump a truckload of horse manure on the bridge? They will be screwed big time. So he dumped the manure and drove away. Hours later, the state police came to my neighbor's farm and asked if he knew about the bridge being blocked. And he told them he did it at my request because the campers were refusing to leave and that they cussed him out. After a good laugh, the cop asked for a shovel and wheelbarrow and took it to them and told them they have 3 hours to move the manure or would be arrested for trespassing and burning on private property. The police instructed the campers to move the poop into a pile in the field and scrape it off the bridge. My neighbor made a video of the event and it's the funniest thing I've ever seen. And yeah, Ripe Stars, certainly these campers did not know that you never mess with a farmer or his friends in this case. I guess they learned their lesson. But then again, seriously, who just trespasses on someone else's property, gets comfortable and even starts camping? That would certainly not be me. Entitled neighbor's driveway encroached over my property line. I built a fence and blocked him in. Next to my home lives a man that seems to have a lot of money that he enjoys spending on himself. He does not seem to have kids, so it is just his wife and him to spend money on all sorts of luxury things. This alone does not bother me because I have no idea where his money comes from, but I guess he earned it and can spend it however he wants. The problem really is that my neighbor is a huge jerk, not only to me, but everyone else that he comes in contact with. When I go to work, he likes to laugh about how I work all day and still drive an old car that has no style. He can clearly see that I have 3 kids and obviously will put most of my money into that instead, and it doesn't end there. He always complains when my kids are playing on the lawn, saying how they are going to ruin something, and even though it is my property, it will somehow make him look bad. His wife is always telling my wife that her husband is the greatest because he buys her designer stuff and I could learn a thing or two from her husband. Somebody telling my wife that I'm not a good husband because I cannot afford to get her the best brands really rubs me the wrong way. From what I can hear from some friends around town, when he is out and about, he is also at the store commenting when people buy things that are more on the cheaper side. The thing I hate the most though is one thing that he always does with his car in the driveway. He likes to rev it very loudly for no reason at very odd hours and wake everybody up. One time I had to run out at like 2 in the morning telling him to knock it off because it was the middle of the night and it woke up me and all of my kids. If you have never tried getting a 2-year-old back to sleep after being woken up, let me tell you that it's not an easy thing. When I would go out to tell him, he would intentionally rev it even louder and act like he could not even hear what I was saying. oh, why don't I just talk to him when he is not in the car being an a-hole? Well, I thought that too and tried to go over and talk to him when I saw him one day. It did not end well and was just more crap about me being jealous and that he was not going to dial back his life so I could feel better about myself. So I wanted some revenge on this guy to teach him a lesson, and I had what I thought was a good idea. Not only did he like to deal with his car at odd hours, but he also liked to leave the top of his car down even when he wasn't in it. This gave me an evil idea and I decided to take his advice to spend a little money on something luxury. My garden was next to the driveway and I decided that it really deserved some sprinklers as close to his car as I could get while still being on my property. If you cannot see where I'm going with this, I was planning on setting the sprinklers to go off in the middle of the night and get him and his car interior soaked. The only issue was I did not know exactly where my property started and his began, I just knew it was in that general area. I was friends with the guy who does surveying for the town though, and he agreed to come out and unofficially take a look at where the line was so I could install the sprinklers. What he found was so much better and put a stop to my plans for water-based revenge. So I need to pause the story to tell you how exactly his driveway is shaped. The start of it is in the direction of my house and then goes back towards his. Maybe think of like a question mark but upside down and without the dot. My friend told me that the starting part of the driveway was actually all considered my land and he had built his driveway thinking that the whole thing belonged to him. If it was anybody else, I honestly would not have cared they were doing it and let them since things like that don't bother me. Since it was this horrible man though, I wanted to get revenge and I thought of something better that would also not potentially cause me getting sued for car damage. I built a fence that went right through his driveway and now he did not really have any way to enter it through the street. As you can guess, he was not happy that I did this and started screaming about how I cannot do this and the driveway is on his land and he is going to get me sued. I calmly told him that if he gets a survey saying that the driveway is on his land, I will take down the fence right away. He tried and found that I was right and my fence was allowed to stand because it was on my property. He was fuming and telling me that he had to take the fence down because there was no other way for him to park his car on his property. There was really no good way for him to go around either, because his gate was in the way and if he tried going around on my side, a tree would block him. I don't know what I'm going to do next because I know that he's not going to stay parked on the streets forever. My guess is that he will build a new driveway that is totally on his property. For now though, at least I can sleep with my family and not worry about this guy making crazy noise with his car in the middle of the night. I think whatever they are planning to do about it is costing them a lot of money because I noticed that his wife, while still dressing in fancy clothing, is wearing stuff that's a little bit cheaper. I don't know what he's going to do once he gets back, but I always have that sprinkler idea in my back pocket if he wants to start with me again. They have stopped talking to us completely, which I think is a miracle, because I was sick of being told how to take care of my wife by this jerk. I hope he learned that when a guy nobody likes messes with somebody who has friends all over town, it can end with you getting into some serious trouble. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.